Welcome everybody to my channel. My name is Kolade Oyebola. For those that are joining me for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and share this content. Today we are going to be looking at nested if, statistical if, sum if, count if, and average if. And I believe at the end of this session, you would have learned one or two Excel tricks and tips. So come along with me. You're welcome back. So we'll be looking at nested if. Nested if is used in a situation where you have multiple conditions. So when you have multiple conditions to be met to return a value, you use nested if. And nested if simply means deploying if function multiple times. So I'm going to demonstrate it with a simple sales data. So looking at this data, we know that each of these tabs is entitled to sales bonus. However, the sales bonus is not straightforward in the sense that there are three categories of the bonus like we have here. So if a staff make a sales above 22,000, it gets 10%. Any sales below 19,000 gets 0%. That means it doesn't get any bonus. Whereas others, that means anybody that makes sales between 19,000 to 22,000, we get 2%. That's what this means, others. So let's deploy the nested if function. So we know that the first condition is that if you sell above 22,000, so we are going to deploy our if function, equal if the sales of Bolade is greater than, we can reference the cell since we have the value, in a particular cell. So we can just reference the cell. And don't forget, we'll be deploying this formula for everyone on this table. So we have to make sure that we convert this relative cell to an absolute cell by simply pressing F4. So that converts the relative cell to an absolute cell, so that each time you deploy this formula to other cells below the cell, it will always keep this cell C13 absolute. So we know that, okay, if the sales of Bolade is greater than 22,000, you are meant to pay bonus of 10%. Also make it absolute. 10% of the sales. Now, if not, we could have just returned false. However, we still have another condition to be met. So we are still going to deploy the if function again. So we'll now put if. That means we have brought another condition into this function. And the second condition to be met is that the sales, if it is less than 19,000, we're still going to reference that cell, or we'll convert it to an absolute cell by pressing F4. It's less than that. We know it is 0%. So, but let's still put the formula. I will have just written 0, but let's put the formula. Multiply the sales. Now, else, the top condition is that every other sales not within this category gets 2%. What does that mean? If this, we already know that the second function already gave us what is the value if it is false. So if all these conditions, these two conditions were already put there, if they are false, what do we want Excel to return? We want Excel to return 2% of sales. So with this, we have met all the three conditions. So we can press enter and just deploy to all the cells. And you see, now we have, that is nested if. We have all our answers. We can actually check to be sure Excel has returned the right thing. So we can just look at Bolade. 2,500 is 10% of 25. 25 is greater than 22,000. So that is nested if. So in statistical if, we deploy this sometimes when we want to return, for instance, the maximum value in a range, or want to return the minimum value in a range. In this case, we'll be using a simple sales data to explain this factor. So in this data, we're looking for the best performer among these sales reps. Who is the top performer? So in that means we're looking for the employee with the highest sales. We can deploy if function with another function that I will mention just now. So let's deploy our formula. Equal if the sales of Bolade 25,000 is equal to the maximum, if it is the maximum among this range of sales. Don't forget, I'm going to deploy that formula to other cells. I want to keep that range absolute. So I'll just simply press F4 to keep it absolute. If it is the maximum, return to me a string called best performer. As a test, I'll put it in quote. Yeah, if not, leave it blank. Yeah, close my bracket, and that is it. So let's apply the formula for others. So we can see Mohammed is the best performer. So we'll also deploy it for the least performer. There we're going to be looking at the minimum of the person with the least sales for the period. So in this case, we'll deploy our if function. So if the sales of Bolade is equal to the minimum in this range, don't forget to keep it absolute. If it is the minimum in that range, we want you to return least performer. If not, leave it blank. So we do that, apply the formula, and voila, we're done. So that is statistical if. So we have sum if, count if, average if. In what situation do you deploy these two? Now, in a situation where you have multiple information in a data set, maybe you have 50,000 different records in a data set, and you want to return value for a specific entity within the data set, how do you go about it? That is where this tool comes in handy. So, for instance, in using sum if, count if, and average if in a simple sales data like the one we have here, you can see we have a scenario to solve. The first scenario is that what is the total sales to COUNTIF Limited? In this data set, you can see that COUNTIF Limited appear in multiple places, like we have here, and like that. We could have series of that sales to COUNTIF. So how do we return the sum of its total? So this formula, sum if, comes in handy. Don't forget, when you deploy if is when you have one condition. Usually, it's when you have multiple conditions, you have to either deploy if, multiple times, or you just add other functions to it. So in this case, we are looking at just one condition. So we're going to be using sum if. So how do we deploy our formula? Come along with me. So we have equal. In this case, we're looking for sales, total sales of COUNTIF in this data set. So we're going to be saying that equal sum if. So sum if, look at what Excel is asking you. What is the range you are looking at? So we're looking at COUNTIF in this range of data. In this particular column, in this range, we're looking for COUNTIF. So Excel, look for COUNTIF in this range. And then when you see it, when you find COUNTIF in those range, in that range, return COUNTIF for me, right? When you look through this range, look for COUNTIF. Then when you find COUNTIF, go to this range and sum corresponding value for COUNTIF and return the sum to me. And Excel will do just that. So we can see COUNTIF sales in this data set is 2,375,000. You get? So secondly, we're looking for number of order by Tile Brothers. So this is a count. We're looking for the number of orders made by Tile Brothers. So we're going to deploy count if. So we're telling Excel, count if. Look at this range and count distinct item in that range if they correspond to tile brother in this cell. So we close it and Excel will return to us. It's telling us that the number of orders made by tile brothers is 4 within the data set. Likewise, we look at average if. So we're looking at average sales per order to bricks associate. So we're going to look at we're going to deploy average if. So average, Excel, look within this range. Look for bricks association within that range. When you find it, go to this range of total and give me the average value of the item belonging to bricks associate, and Excel will return that to you. Voila. So these are the situations where you deploy SUMIF, COUNTIF, and AVERAGEIF. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this session, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, share this item, and like the content. Thank you.